Welcome everybody. I apologise for the way our setup is subject to all sorts of communication problems. So bear with us. Are there any apologies? I have apologies from Councillor Garrett Gottlieb and Community Board Member Kath Whiteman. Are there any others? Can I have a seconder or a mover and a seconder for?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yep. Anyone in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. 1.3 public forum. I'll remind speakers that you've got 5 minutes. We have Bob Brenton, Chair of the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board as resident ratepayers. Good morning, Bob. Good morning.
Several items. I'll be quick on that, not 5 minutes. First one is 3.1 on the agenda, board representatives.
Yes.
We noticed that there's only 2 from Pāuanui if you include the community response groups. We believe that the Pāuanui Club should be part of it because that is the Civil Defence Centre, and they were used during the recent storm, and there was a lot of issues there with. It's a private club. They didn't have the generators. They didn't have the infrastructure to actually maintain it. So I think it's unreasonable for us to think that the 1,300 members pick up the tab for everything that's been done there, and it's been nominated as a community response centre. So there's a lot of things that need to be addressed through that. The second one is the Pāuanui Library. Operates on a shoestring. It's all volunteers. They do operate out of a council building, and they get a $7,000 a year grant to buy books. It's an amazing service provided by the community, and to be a member of the community, the library, it's $20 a head. So for a couple, it costs $40 a head to actually belong to the library. So run on a shoestring, and compared to the $200,000 that the Tairua Library costs, I think that should be considered to a visit or someone attending the AGM. And the other one is the information centre. Again, in a council building, it's a grant from council, so someone should be nominated to look after the Parliament Information Centre as well. Second item is the dreaded Holland Close. Now, we had a neat meeting with Ian Smith 2 weeks ago. This is the Late Nights Committee, and Ian updated us on where it's at, and I see Ian's here today. There's been words that there's going to be a meeting after this board meeting for the staff to update the members. It's a real concern that you guys, the members, are having these secret meetings and everybody else is locked out. It's part of the discussion. So when does the community actually get input and actually find out what's going on? Now, it's fine if everything's going as per Ian has told us, but where's the background? What's happening? And it's just total frustration because this has been going on now for 10 to 15 years. We estimate that the council spent in the region of $500,000 on modelling, experts, consultants, and staff time, and not a blade of grass has been pulled out of the stream. So it's time for the talk fest to end and actually get something done. So I guess the concern is, when does the community and the Ratepayers Association get the opportunity to have input if you guys are going to have secret meetings and we don't get invited? So if anybody wants to give me an answer, I'd appreciate it. I mean, at the election, we were told this was going to be the most open, transparent council, and to date, nothing's changed. You just can't get any information. What you're given is, oh, no one's made a decision on that. The annual plan's going to come out. You'll see what's in the annual plan. The horse is already bolted when you create an annual plan and the community said, no, don't put into it. It'd be a lot easier if the community had input into the annual plan initially. It saved a lot of time and bloody wasted effort. So the last one is this tree that's in Holland Close. That's the southern end. We've raised it a number of times and we've told it it's not affecting the flood. Well, if you go down there when it's not that close it with it, it's chock-a-block with crop. Staff have been down and said it's not an issue. It's a major issue. Just get down there with a chainsaw and get it taken out. Now we've got some angry farmers that have said, look, we're going to go and do it because if the council doesn't do it, we'll do it. So for a PA exercise or anything, just get in and clean it out for God's sake. So that's me.
That's good.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm getting to the point, mate, because I'm getting very frustrated.
You and me both.
Add to that.
I was talking about you, that's rookie.
I can make a comment, mate.
Yes.
Just through the chair, just in response to your comments about Holland Close, Bob. When the elected members were on their induction tour, they went to Holland and had a look around Holland. And it was one of the things that this board has asked to have a briefing on, just so it can understand the background history. There's nothing that Ian will tell them this afternoon that the community members do not know. It's pretty much as simple as that. And also Mr. Costa has been invited along to talk to the board with Ian, so that perspective is given. So there's not anything.
Well, I chaired that working group, so I hope you've got a lot of time because it's 15 years of bloody inaction to discuss.
Yeah, but we can, whatever happens, we can touch base with Ian afterwards and just make sure that we've got all those connections right.
Thank you, Dean. Are there any other speakers?
Can I just add to what Bob said? Now, I phoned before Christmas
Your name?
about
Your
the
name?
Julie Costa.
Judy, please.
Yes, I phoned before Christmas a number of times to council to have the tree removed. They came down and took out one branch, and we just couldn't understand it because when stuff comes down there, it catches it. It just needs a piece of plywood and the whole of that south end will be flooded. Yeah. What, I'm sorry, I have to mention his name, Lou Macro. One branch. It was only about this big and the rest of it's all there. Yeah. Oh. Unbelievable.
Chair, I'm sure we share your frustration.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers, which people wish to speak to public forum?
Just about on the Holland Close area. I've been invited to this afternoon, but I was just wondering if you guys are going to be full on. Now, we had a working group set up, and that was set up a number of years ago to do it. Chris was on it. Bob was the chairman of it. Now, the last meeting we had was supposed to be on the 5th of May last year. 3 of us turned up, nobody from council turned up. Ian turned up a bit later on. So the meeting was called through by council, but I was wondering if to get information, we're not getting any more information from the council to us, the residents there, to this working group. So can we set this working group back in action again? On it.
Through the chair, absolutely. We'll have that discussion with operations straight after this afternoon, so in the next couple of days. But I'm not aware of any reason why we wouldn't be engaging. So we'll look at that straight away. I don't know, Ian, if you've got any more to, oh, yes, Ian's here. So he was going to brief us this afternoon.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I just for information, I guess, I've taken excuse me, taken over the project about 6 months ago. And was totally frustrated with some of the things that were going on. I've had potentially nearly 20 years experience working in streams with the regional council with the catchment board. So I've made some changes to what was going on. Work has progressed steadily. I think we were getting overcomplicated with what we were trying to do there. So basically it's gotten to the stage, and I've communicated with Bob, I've communicated with the community board because I was asked to, but where it is at now that we've got a design out for the upgraded stormwater drainage in Mount Avenue that's just about ready to go to tender. We're intending to have that worked up this year. We're trying to get, and Dean and I, he's also ex-regional council, are going to have a meeting on site tomorrow to see what we can do before we get the consent, because getting the consent to do our own consent rather than using the regional council's existing general authorisation or permitted activities works. In the longer term, we decided, or I decided, was going to be a better option. So we still are going through with the process of getting the consent, but it's been delayed by all sorts of things that those of us that are old enough to recognise the increased bureaucracy that we've got now. It's just taking a long time. So I am hoping to do that work before we get the consent, because it still hasn't been lodged due to the draft AEE assessment of environmental effects has been completed, is out now and has just been reviewed. And that I expect that to be lodged very soon, but you know, as you're all aware, lodging a consent has been very soon for probably 18 months or 2 years. And the other thing that we're intending to do there is to raise the driveway to 19 and 19A and put a small wall along there at about flood level. The flood level last week has given us a really good indication that we're on the right tracks. And I've actually got out with EPO and the storm getting quotes to do that work. So I'm also hoping to, well, I think I'm going to have that work done by the end of this financial year as well.
Thank you.
Okay, just going to carry on. We have 2 other issues there in the area. Since the weather we had there a lot of rain, the lake behind us has risen up so high. Now it's leaking through the ground, and we've got a in the roundabout, I think it's number 12, by where the sump pumps or the sewage pump is. The lake was leaking into that, and we had sewage all down the road. And the water is still leaking there. We've got a stormwater drain there. It goes nowhere. We want it connected up to the existing stormwater drain that we got. That's one thing on it. Now, the main stormwater drain along beside number 2, 3, and 4, there was 2 great holes above the drain. I put it out to Varela about last week, and there were holes and they were deep, and they were right above the pipe, 2 of them there. And what 2 or 3 years ago, they were having a drain inspection. It's a 600 volts pipe, and it couldn't take the camera down because the camera cable just folded up. And they were going to get a crawler camera in there to do it, to see if that pipe had broken and that onto it. Now, nothing's been done about that. I've got a report here, Andy Rush, no, nothing wrong with it, but they couldn't get along to that area because the cable kept folding up onto the camera. Now, one roller comes down, and they said, oh, it's quite a large area in front of number 1. It's a large area, it's about a couple of metres long, it's slumped down, and then there was a big hole onto it. Whether that pipe is broken or the seals are broken, I don't know. up further, it's a deeper hole and quite large. Now, whether those are to be repaired, but Varela just filled the hole in without expecting the pipe, see what was happening. So that were the two main things we got on to it. The other thing is the down below the culvert, it hasn't been sprayed, it's just a mass of weed and that now too. And that needs to be cleaned out, that's what so I'm going to attend this afternoon to bring my thoughts up ahead about consents and that, which none have been put forward.
Thank you.
Can I add to that, the spring in the lake hasn't been cleaned out for 10 to 12 years. And there's plants growing up and it's just choked. And that could be blocking the pipe at the far end where it's supposed to drain out.
I put a request for service to do it, but
We've done.
nothing's been done.
May I respond again? We did have a camera in town last week when we've got a broken water main broken sewers main again, or manhole at the airfield, but it was 4 o'clock by the time I finished there, so I didn't really want to get the guy to go down and do that pipe. Veolia are aware of it and are looking at the structural integrity of that pipe on Holland Close. The initial about the lake, I respected that with the guys from Veolia early last week, and they have already had an RFS to clean that, will drain out the drain between Drury Lane and Tairua Settlement Road, and that they've been issued an NTC to do it this morning by Brett, so that's in hand as well. And the reason for the surface water is very similar to the rest of a lot of the rest of Pāuanui and some of Whangatara as well, because the groundwater levels are just so high that it's got nowhere to go. And it is groundwater, and when you stand in the cul-de-sac at the end of Holland Close, you can see the road is actually lower than the lake level. And so the drain between Drury Lane and the golf course and Tairua Settlement Road is due to be cleaned out any day, any time today.
Thank you.
What the NTC?
We need to move on. You're not alone with your problems, believe me.
Yeah.
We need to move on. So I'll put the motion that the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board receives the deputation and along with the tabled photo. Can I have a move and second, please?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Item 1.4, we have a presentation from Mr. Sydney Wales. Is he available?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sydney is from Biosecurity New Zealand. He's going to enlighten us all on the exotic seaweed pest. Tairua-Pāuanui.
Tairua-Pāuanui.
Go ahead.
Cool. Kia ora, everyone. Can you hear me all right? I'm hearing a bit of a buzzing in my ear. Not sure if it's just me.
Yeah, we can hear. It's
Okay. Oh, we'll go ahead anyway.
Probably.
Yes, anyway, my name's Sid. So I'm from Biosecurity New Zealand, and I've been covering the position of controller for the exotic calliope response for the last few weeks now, and I've been part of the response in general for over a year. So I'll just quickly share my screen. I've got a bit of a presentation for you guys. If I can work out how to do it. I've lost my cool. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about exotic calliope. Basically, first I'll discuss what this seaweed is, what risks it poses to us in the environment, and what the response has done so far, and what we plan to do in the future. So, what is exotic calliope, and why are we concerned? So, yeah, this seaweed, exotic calliope, it's native to the Indo-Pacific region. It's been found basically all over the world, Pacific Islands, Japan, Africa, Australia, and it's an invasive species, which was first detected in New Zealand at Great Barrier Island back in July 2021. It was first found there, and then it was in Blind Bay, which is, if I get my pointer out, which is here. And then it was subsequently found down in this harbour and up here in Whangapara as well. And then about 5 months later, we also found it on the western side of Great Mercury Island, Ahuahu. So what's happening there? Oh yeah. Here's Great Mercury Island, just down the sort of southwestern coast here. Cool. So why is caliper bad? So this seaweed, it spreads really fast and it forms these deep, dense mats that cover the entire seafloor really, and they smother all native species, all native seaweed species, seagrasses, etc. And they can have impacts on other kaimoana species such as scallops, crayfish, particularly in a good example of this is in Florida. It was called the killer algae because of the effects it had on the coastline, caused the displacement of large numbers of their crayfish populations and had a serious effect on their fisheries there. So as you can see here, this photo is of a scallop with some caliper growing on it. So the impacts can be quite significant. Obviously, the scallop wants to try and get around, but it's going to be difficult with the seaweed growing on it. So basically, it just grows over everything, carpets it, and smothers it. So how does it spread? So this seaweed in particular spreads through what we call fragmentation. So a little piece of it can break off in wave action or from someone dropping their anchor on it or knocking it around when they're diving. And that fragment can go and settle somewhere else, and it can then start growing roots and take hold. So we expect it came from a ship probably from South Australia, came over, had some caught in its anchor, dropped anchor in Blind Bay. We estimate probably about 5 years ago based on how much is there. And it just settled and took hold. So yeah, the fragments can be carried around by the currents as well. Though we expect that based on current projections that it will only naturally spread around Great Barrier Island and Great Mercury Island, and that the only way that it can really get to the mainland would be through human mediated action. So if someone gets it caught in their gear pretty much and then sails back to Hauraki Gulf somewhere and drops anchor. So that's been our primary focus for the last wee while, is trying to spread awareness of this method of spreading it and getting people to check and clean their anchor chain and any other fishing diving equipment that may have been in contact with this seaweed. Yeah, so the fragments can survive out of water for up to 7 to 10 days, so which makes it quite dangerous, especially if they're in like a moist container, like an anchor locker or like bunched up fishing net, so it can survive reasonably well. It's quite hardy, so it makes it extra dangerous. So how to identify it? So exotic caliper has these long oar-shaped leaves, which can get to about 10 centimeters long, and a key distinguishing factor is this this long sort of runner or root, or stolon is what it's called, which grows underneath the sediment, and then these fronds sprout up from it. So we've seen it growing on almost all substrates. On our Aotea, out to about 35 meters deep, we've seen it. I think 38 meters is the deepest we've ever seen it. Any deeper than that, then it struggles to get enough light to survive, which is likely the reason why it hasn't naturally spread to the mainland. It's just too deep in the Colville Channel there for it to get across, and it's negatively buoyant as well, so it will slowly sink, which is good for us. So it can wash up on the beach, as in that previous slide. As beach casts, they can kind of ball into these almost tumbleweed-like things. As you can see behind me, possibly, if you can see my screen, to these long kind of balls or knotted up masses of caliper, and they can sort of roll around and roll up onto the beach. And especially after stormy weather, we've seen quite significant amounts of beach cast. I've got some photos of this beach behind me after Cyclone Gabriel, which was quite dramatic, but I'll move on to that soon. So here's an example of like a bird's eye view of it. So you can see these broad, quite all really light green leaves, and these stolons you can see just growing all over itself. Just really dense, and just doesn't give it much space for any other organism to take hold. Here's a more of an isolated patch, which is just shows how difficult it is to spot if it is just a small patch. So if you've got divers out there and they're trying to find this little patch, it's only a couple of centimeters wide. But if they miss it in a dive and then they come back in 3 months later, it could have taken 20 square meters or so. It's hard to say, but it's quite fast growing. So the earlier you detect it, the more chance we have of preventing it spreading. So here's another bird's eye view, so you can see the stolons here and the broad shaped leaves, and really no space for any other organism to get in. And then this photo here, you can kind of see these initial leaves of the caulerpa starting to grow, and then it's got stolons all underneath the sediment here, and all these little pinnules coming up. These are going to be the beginnings of more leaves, so it will spread out its stolons and start sprouting up before, yeah. So here are some images of Okupu Beach in Blind Bay after Cyclone Gabriel. So as you can see, the entire beach was absolutely covered in the stuff. Over 100 tons, we estimate, was washed up there, sometimes thigh deep in places. And so Bicycle New Zealand, Auckland City Council and local mana whenua have been working to clear the beach of this, particularly around the boat ramp areas. Because as you can see in this photo, trailers can get caught in it, it can get tied up, and then if this trailer drives to the other side of the island, for example, drops in without washing down, then it could spread it to the other side of the island. Yeah, so quite risky. There are some native species of caulerpa in New Zealand that's good to be aware of. So there's Caulerpa articulata and Caulerpa brownie. So both of these species look quite different to the exotic caulerpa. You can tell they kind of look like ferns. So they've got this long sort of mid spine, and then these different pinnules running off. Also known as sea remu, because it kind of looks like a remu plant. And those are good ones. So if you do think you found some, what you should do is take a picture. The closer and higher quality the picture, the better. Give us a call on our 0800 number, and then they'll explain where to send the photos, and then what the next steps will be. Basically, it'll be sent to one of our incursion investigators, who will get the photos assessed by a taxicologist, taxonomist, and they can either request further photos or request a sample to be sent in, or say that it's not caulerpa. So I'll just talk a bit now about the exotic caulerpa response itself. So firstly, what is a response? So when a biosecurity threat is detected in New Zealand, such as a invasive pest or an unwanted organism is found, then Biosecurity New Zealand will assess the risk and possibly stand up a response based on that, and also whether it can be managed by business as usual methods. So for the exotic caulerpa response, which was stood up in July 2021, we start off with these 3 main response objectives to reduce the risk of exotic caulerpa around Aotea, Oahu and Aotearoa, to minimise impacts to the environment, the communities and visitors, and also to enhance the mana of the mana whenua and all other partners in the response. So what's been carried out to date? Quite a lot. So we established a partnership-based response. So that's in collaboration with Auckland City Council for the Aotea specific response. That is Auckland City Council, DOC, local marae and iwi trusts, and members of the commercial fishing groups. And similarly for Ahuahu, they've got their own governance group, which has been set up with members of Waikato and 10 Coromandel district councils. So we initially set up a technical advisory group to provide the best technical advice about how we can possibly manage the seaweed. And we also set up controlled area notices around the 3 harbours on Great Barrier Island where it's been detected, and the 1 harbour on Ahuahu has been detected. Since Labour weekend, we've set up a really comprehensive public information and behavioural change campaign. It's called Seaweed Chuck It Straight Back, and that is to get the message across to boaties and fishers and anyone who might be out in the water to make sure that they check and clean their anchor, and if they do find any exotic caulerpa on it or any seaweed and for that matter, that they just pick it off and throw it back in the water from where they picked it up. That's really important. We did try local elimination using salt, so they pour salt from a hopper down onto the sea floor, about 50 kgs of salt per square metre, and it worked well, except it didn't just kill the caulerpa, it killed all the native species as well. And we worked out there's just too much of it now for it to be a viable method of treatment for these large populations. We are looking into using it for possible new detections. So if we discover a patch on the mainland, hopefully we don't, but if we do, we should be ready to go and get out there and treat it before it becomes large enough to be unmanageable. But it all really depends on how early we detect it. There's also a ambassador program set up on Aotea and Whitianga, which involves members of the local marae, and they've been helping spread that awareness and education. And we've had people out on boats, 2 charter fisher boats actually on Aotea, going out patrolling around the can zones, making sure that people are following the rules and also aware. So where are we going from now? So we've determined that local elimination of this global caulerpa isn't feasible at this stage. Just there's so much of it in Blind Bay itself. We've estimated about 45 hectares of it out in the bay there. There will be a bit less based on how much we saw washed up on the beach, but there's still significant amounts out there, as we've had divers from NIWA working over the weekend to set up some new research, which I'll talk about a bit later. So the aim is to shift to a more of a long-term management approach, which will be changing from regulations based on controlled area notices, etc., and moving to more education. So this will be called the Exotic Caulerpa Management Program, and we're hoping to get that up and running by June this year. So at the moment, we've got these, as I mentioned, these controlled area notices. So on these are going to be in place until at least the 30th of April. Then they'll then be reviewed, possibly extended, possibly not. That will be for the governance group to decide on. And yes, so this one over here is the current one at Great Mercury Island. So the rules are slightly different here to Great Barrier. So here you're allowed to anchor, but you have to clean and check your anchor before you leave. That's a requirement. But there is no collection of kaimoana, so that involves any type of fishing or diving. Yeah, in comparison on Great Barrier, so these 3 harbours, there is no anchoring at all, except in exceptional circumstances where you can apply for a permit. So that would be for research, for access to private residential property where there's only onward access, and for the provision or access to essential services. And then no permit is required if there's an emergency. So if there's rough weather, then you can go and anchor without the need for a permit. And there is some fishing allowed in these 3 anchor zones, but it is only rod and line fishing from the shore or from a wharf or a fixed point. So in terms of active surveillance, we don't have any plan, but we're tying into a bunch of other surveillance programs which we already have in place in collaboration with NIWA and other district councils. And we're hoping that community surveillance, once there's more education goes around about how to identify it, will help us get early detections. Yeah, and like I said, there's also dock surveillance programs, and we've been working closely with the Waiheke Marine Project, who have set up their own local surveillance project with remote operated vehicles, which has been really useful. So the Comms and Awareness campaign, yeah, it started back, like I mentioned, in Labour weekend, and it's been going strong over the summer. The aim is, yeah, to target boaties in the public to get them to basically follow best marine biosecurity practices to stop the spread of caliper, not just caliper actually, so just to for any other future seaweed incursion that there may be, it's just good to get the education out there for people to check and clean their anchor to stop spread of any other unwanted organisms spreading around the country. So we did use, we got in touch with Matt Watson, who you might recognise from the IGM Fishing Show. So he's been working alongside us to promote our messaging, and his social media posts have reached, I think, over 1 million people, as well as our advertising, signage, other apps that we've been using have reached a really large audience. So that's really good to see. Next step is the caliper research program. So we've got 3 key work streams here. So the first, we're working currently with Ngāti Hei and Cawthron Institute. Ngāti Hei is based out of Whitianga, and they're going to be looking at firstly the ecological impacts of the caliper and possibly the use of eDNA, which is environmental DNA, which may be a possible method of detecting caliper in their environment in the future. We've also got NIWA currently, they're there right now out in the water at Aotea, and so they're investigating the impacts of caliper on the ecosystem and specifically taonga species such as kina and scallops, and also as part of that setting up long-term transects, which are like roped off areas which they can come back to and monitor how the environment kind of changes over time, especially after the storm. It's really going to be really interesting to see how the caliper either comes back after that massive weather event or how it competes with other native species. And then finally, we're working with AUT to start some lab trials of kina to see if they'll eat it before any other native species. Basically, they're going to get some tanks, they're going to put some kina in it with some caliper and another known food source of kina, and see whether they will eat the caliper before the native species, afterwards, or whether they just don't eat it at all. And yeah, so that's me. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, I got a question. Excuse me. I'm interested in those rahu which you put around those bays. How long have they been in place? I missed that part of the conversation.
Yeah, so they're currently in place until the 30th of April, at which point they'll be reviewed. I think it's unlikely that they'll be extended, but that's not for me to decide. They'll go to the governance groups, and there may be different rules involved as well.
Yeah, so what are they planning to do in those? Are they trying to eradicate the actual caliper from that area, or are they just watching it and monitoring it?
Yeah, so at this stage, we don't see eradication as feasible. There's just too much of it there to get out there. With the salt, there'd be something like 200,000 tons of salt needed, I think was our estimate, to eradicate it. And so at this stage, the focus of response is just trying to stop it from spreading.
So do you think the change in climate with a lot more warmer water coming to New Zealand, that this kind of weed will flow with it? Will it be part of that transition?
Yeah, we definitely think that the warmer waters has played a part of how successful caliper has been. It does like to thrive in warmer waters. Based on our modelling, we can the water temperatures down to, I think, Napier, anywhere above anywhere north of Napier should have warm enough waters to sustain it. But yeah, as the warmer waters do come through, the easier it is for it to spread, right?
No, thank you.
On the, early in the presentation, there was a note there about it spreading on coastal currents. What's this, so if it's on Great Mercury now, the prevailing current out here is north to south, effectively along the coast. What's to stop bits of it floating down and affecting the Aldermans and our coastal, this eastern side of Coromandel?
Yeah, so we've discussed with our technical experts about this risk, and there is a risk that it could travel across from Great Mercury to the Coromandel. That risk is low because the waters are quite deep in that channel. It gets below 40 meters, deeper than 40 meters, sorry, and because the seaweed is negatively buoyant, it will slowly sink. But correct, in instances such as the cyclone, there may be increased risk because of the turbulent waters, and it may just be kept going up. So we have had people going out and monitoring along like Ofito Bay, that's that sort of that north eastern side of the Coromandel, where we possibly would expect Calibre to wash up. But with any luck, it hasn't made it across. It's still quite a far way for it to float across.
Is there any chance that we can get a copy of that presentation?
Yeah, yes, if you go online, this will be uploaded onto the council page. Yeah, okay. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Sydney. I'll move that the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board receives the presentation from Biosecurity New Zealand on the exotic seaweed pest Calibre. Can I have a seconder? A mover and a seconder, please.
Yeah. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Keep it out of our place.
Item 1.5, any items not on the agenda? Very many, there have been none. Item 1.6, conflicts of interest. Does any member have any conflict of interest to declare? Being none. Item 1.7, minutes for confirmation. Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board confirms the minutes for the meeting held on the 21st of November 2022. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move that way.
Yeah. Are there any anomalies, errors or corrections?
Excuse me, Chair. Through the chair, could I have a seconder for the minutes?
We've got a Barry, I think was the seconder. You hear?
Yes, thank you.
Barry?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, we heard.
Yeah.
We heard.
Okay, if there be none, then I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
You
Aye.
Yeah. 2.1, elected members, procedural matters and information, code of conduct. That the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board receives the elected members' procedural matters and information report dated 30th of January 2023. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Yes, I'll move.
Second it.
Is that moved by Chris, seconded by Barry? Quite a lengthy document. Are there any discussion?
Who's presenting it?
Sorry?
Who's presenting? Who's talking about it?
I'm asking for any discussion on the elected members' procedural matter and information code of conduct.
Yeah, well, somebody must have put it up. Who put it up?
Margaret,
Is she here to speak to it?
Through the chair, yes, I am here. Good morning, board.
good morning.
Morning.
Anything we should know, Ari, other than what's on the paper?
Yeah, I'll take the report as read. There's nothing that you need to be aware of other than we did sign this off with council on the 13th of December.
Thank you.
Any comment?
Is there any other questions?
Quite a document. We're still digesting it.
Blind bureaucracy.
Fair enough.
I suppose you got to keep busy over there somehow.
Yes, we do, and we do need to keep you in check.
We do need a what?
Keep us in check.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you, Ari. So I'll restate the motion that the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board receives the elected members' procedural matters and information report dated 13th of January. We've had a move in a second. I put the motion. All in favour?
No.
Seconded? Seconded?
Thank you.
3.1. The Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board liaison and representatives. Motion being that the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board receives the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board liaison and representatives report dated 6th of January 2023. 2, decides whether it wishes to establish the liaison and representatives for the current term or whether it wishes to develop new arrangements. Or 3, appoints nominated board members as liaison representatives to community groups or organisations. Should it decide to re-establish the liaison representatives and adopt the terms of reference for liaison representatives. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Yeah.
Moved Chris, seconded Barry. Eileen.
Yes, good morning, board. So take the report as read. So I guess the first thing the board needs to decide is whether the board do wish to appoint liaison representatives to the community groups.
Yeah.
You do? You do want to appoint? In which case, if you do want to appoint, then we'll go on to the list of community groups for the board to appoint a representative to those groups. And you also need to, if you want to consider the 3 groups that the Pāuanui residents ratepayers brought up in the public forum.
So can I just confirm that what the liaison position involves?
So the terms of reference are very clear between the board and the board member and the community group. You cannot hold a position on the community group. You're basically there as the board's eyes and ears. You have no active part in the group. You cannot commit the Thames Coromandel District Council or the board to any contractual obligations or expenditure. And you report back to the board at their networking sessions.
So you don't need to actually go to the meetings if there's a way of getting a communication, but sometimes the meetings is a good place, but being involved or being connected means having a chat every now and again to see what the issues are as they arise, I would imagine. But also you can be a membership of that club, but still be a liaison, correct? Is that right? If they're a member, not on the committee, just a member.
Yeah, you cannot hold a position on the management committee of the organisation. So you can still be a member, like Lions Club, for instance. You can still be a member of the Lions Club, but be the board's liaison if you're not on the management committee.
So one of the ones we're looking at here is that those key operators or groups could come and present in the public forum part of the meeting, or because we don't have members' reports now, do we?
No.
So to get that information back to the table, it's either by some minutes to give to Eileen, I suppose. I don't know how does the communication come back?
So the board member, as per the report, the board member will update at the next board's community networking day.
On the networking day?
Yeah, so the community groups day.
When that community group's there?
Yeah.
And the board member presents for them?
Yeah, so that's what's in the report, is that the board member will update the board at the next community networking day.
Kind of confusing though, isn't it?
So the board member can, if the community groups don't come along, then your board members can.
Right. I'm a bit confused a little bit, right? Okay. I got some issues around how that communication comes back to the board, whether it's just a phone call or a chat, or just wait for that meeting and they come along and speak to it. So I'm confused.
Well, yeah.
Am I the only one confused?
Yeah, Terry, yeah, I've been compiling a list of a lot of community groups around, and I'm talking little groups, spinners and weavers, just one that comes to mind, to approach them. I don't know how far out we go with this. What are we going to create? I know.
Well, the old days was that we'd go to the meeting, say the AGM or one of those, or a meeting where there's an issue, and report back to the board meeting. But this is a new process that doesn't allow that. It only allows to report back to a network meeting when I'd expect those groups to be at. So I'm quite confused about how this works.
Yeah, I guess it is all new for us as well, because networking meetings days, I mean, if the board still wishes to choose to have the liaison reps, then the liaison reps can report back, give a written report, however you want to do it. And you're correct, you used to bring it up in your members' reports. So I guess that's just something that we can work through to make sure that the correct information is being brought back to the board, whether it's via the community group, the board liaison, or whoever. I guess it's all new for everybody, and we're just going to have to work through what is the best process for that.
Would it make sense that if the say, just take an example, the information centre here, if Eve is going to attend the networking day, then you don't actually need something from whoever it is that's the representative there, Eve being the manager, because you don't know. However, if nobody can come, then the board member that's responsible for that, for networking with that organisation, would then make sure that they have attended a meeting or at least spoken with the chairperson and made sure that anything that they want brought through to the networking day happens. Does that make sense or not?
Well, it might have made sense to me that that's the way it'll work, but it's a bit frivolous to just be a message person to a meeting when they can't attend. Because if there was an issue that they would want to raise, they'd want to attend, I would have thought.
Just through the chair, if you wouldn't mind, I'll just add to this understanding the briefings, the networking meetings. I think attaching a board member as a liaison to any group is just the same as it was before. And so that person would attend or keep connected, just stay in touch. And I think as part of that discussion, we'll decide, whether Group A actually had something to come and talk to the board about informally, or whether there was a chance to go and do a site visit together or attend an important upcoming event that the Group A might have. And even to the extent where Group A may need to in time come and present to the board through public forum or in the way of a report formally. I think it's more just, it's very similar to what it was before, just having someone as that point of contact. So I don't think the new briefings and networkings needs to sort of confuse it any more than that. It's just another opportunity to meet in a different kind of way.
Aren't we doubling up here?
Sounds like me, double up.
Yeah.
Okay, so the board, if you think it's a double up, then as part of the resolution, you can choose not to do board liaison reps. Part of the report says you don't have to do this. This was just something that the boards had said that they had wanted to do. But part of that resolution actually says it's up to the board whether you want to decide to have liaison reps or not.
So maybe we need to go back to these organisations and ask them if they are prepared to have somebody come along from the board and connect with them, or are they just prepared to have an issue and come along to a network meeting? What's their opinion?
If we can do that.
As I mentioned before, there's a lot more organisations than listed there.
Yeah, I mean, I can just see, currently at the networking, we've only had one,
Yeah,
One.
so-
where we've had representatives from resident ratepayers in the main. And some other walking group or whatever, they all seem to be the same people presenting. My idea was to reach out to a wider, broader base of community groups and get their opinions, not contentious issues, not problems, but just to get a feeling to gauge where they see the town could benefit from whatever. But that's my idea.
So why
Most of the
can't we-
conversations go on at the fishing clubs or the bowling clubs, or in our case, when we had a pub, that was where all the talk was done. But I hear Bob saying the Pāuanui Club is a contact place that
Absolutely.
we should either get them at a networking session or get a representative in there. I'm not too sure which way to go on that.
So,
But
so,
networking.
so one of the issues I've got is that the public forum part of the meeting is not productive in terms of how we engage with the community. They've got 3 minutes to say their thing, really, and there's no sort of interaction. So I presume the networking meeting is going to add that value that's missing out with that public forum side of it. So why don't we just look at that list that we've got currently and say, we'll invite those people, that list of people, to a network meeting, so they know they've got an opportunity to come and speak. And then the liaison can only be, if we have a liaison person, it's just that if they're not there, they can bring the matter to the table or something like that. I don't see it as being have to go to a meeting or anything like that. I think it's just very much making that available at a network meeting for those groups to speak openly and have good dialogue back and forth between council and community. What do you think?
Yeah, look, if we go back to our inductions that we had earlier this year for the new community boards and new councillors, this was the way we were looking. That was what our new mayor and our CEO were putting out there. But a wider communication, better consultation. So this networking group, to me, is the way to reach out.
They come to us rather than us go to them. I think it's.
On the other hand, we still need to maintain some of us going to them, because it's not going to be possible for everyone to come to a networking meeting. So I think we've got to make sure that we don't say, oh, well, if you didn't come to the networking day, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, we're all contactable though.
Yeah, but we've got to make sure we go to them as well. So
Yes,
I think that only come if there was issues that they want to raise or just to hear what the issues are. So it would very much be what's available. What I struggle with is, we've got how many on the list? If we've got 9 or 10 groups coming to a meeting, how long will that meeting be? And and how much time have they got to speak? And do we divide that up into smaller meetings? I don't know. So this is all brand new in my head. I'm trying to get my head around it. Yeah, There's-
2, 4, 6, 7, and if you put Bob's 3 in there as well, that's 10.
So there's 10 groups coming to a meeting and have open dialogue. It's going to be a meeting that might take longer than we think. So we don't want to lose value out of the meeting, but how do we drive this to make sure that those conversations can be held with good open forum?
So just through the chair, I do have obviously the ability to let you know what some of the other boards are doing. And so in a couple of the other board areas, what they've done is they've basically given their area manager a list of groups to stay in contact with, and they've said, stay in contact with them and let us know when those groups, when there's opportunities for the board to support, whatever it might be. And then it is, bring them in, we'll go and see what they're interested in and site visit or whatever. So they've put it onto the area manager to remain connected. Obviously, all of you will still hear, and then invite them along as and when,
rotate.
or put them on a schedule.
Yeah.
Based on what is coming up, because some of these groups might go through the year and there might not be anything significant. Other ones might have a couple of significant projects that require a level of support.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I'm also aware that we've got all our representatives actually live here in Tairua at the moment on our community board, and we've got Hawaii and we've got Pāuanui. We had fairly active participation from Pāuanui, which is fair enough. But even so, we need to make sure that we don't, that we've got an even spread of connection, I guess is what I'm looking at.
Yep. I agree. I totally agree.
Okay, so with your resolution then, if you don't choose to actually appoint a representative, then we'll just do number 2, and just change the wording for resolution number 2, which would say that the board does not wish to establish liaison representatives.
Yeah, so I do think we need to have some person who's the person who talked to that group. But I don't think we should go and have to attend all the meetings and things like that. So I don't know if liaison is the right word. I'm trying to get my head around this. A point of contact, so if the skate park wants to talk to somebody about an issue, they talk to, say, anybody, Warwick, say. So that's the sort of contact line if there's any issues. So people are clear about something going on, and they say, well, who's looking after the library at Pāuanui? Well, I'm looking after the library at Pāuanui. I'll make sure I make contact with them. That kind of thing, rather than actually going out there and starting a whole new meeting process with joining their meetings and listening to the issues. I don't know. Is that kind of where you're thinking?
Well, we did try and rotate the last term. We tried to rotate through those main groups. And I don't think it worked that well.
And this we didn't want to go to.
I got, I get involved too personally in it, but it became awkward.
Not sure that it actually achieved what it wanted to achieve.
No.
Well, let's just do the liaison. Let's set it up as a liaison, and we'll just work it out to suit. We'll just decide how much energy we need to be connected. Do you think we just do it? You want to just do it?
We need to increase the list. That's certainly not enough there.
Yeah, that's
So I think do it or not.
quite small.
Wait a minute.
Well,
Don't want to do it.
Sure.
I like what Dean was saying.
You can defer the whole report if you want to, and have another discussion about it, and then bring it back to the next meeting if that's what you want to do as well. Have a discussion about it.
Eileen, can we ask Bob while he's there how he feels about it? Is that possible?
No.
We can't ask Bob. Yeah, well, I think we need to defer it and go back to the community and ask how they want to do it, because this is all about them, and all we are just a messenger boy between them. And we don't want to spend all day running around meetings, and we don't have to, but we do want them to have their voice when they come to those network meetings and feel comfortable that they are going to be heard.
Well, I think number 2. Yeah, I think we should perhaps go with that. Have reps appointed, but I don't think we should be bound to go to every meeting.
It doesn't
Your
say.
terms of reference does not bind you to attend every single meeting.
No, but there's a commitment to it, so we just want to know what that commitment is,
Okay.
So there's one just to add to this. I'm really keen, as part of the reserve management plan, to have a reserve a group that reports back to the community board. plus a beach care and plus a harbour care. So I'm really keen to have 3 more of those committees. One of them's kind of arranged. You've got a beach care or not? You have.
We used to have a harbour care.
There's a beach care in Pāuanui, I believe.
It went into some sort of recess, but it is one of my goals to re-establish a harbour care, call it what you like, beach care, harbour care, and a parks and reserves.
Yeah, so they're really key groups that we want to make sure that report back through the community board. So, so I would be very keen to see those groups formed and having some liaison with them too. So, yeah, so the group gets bigger, not smaller, and how do we make sure we've got enough energy to make sure we're engaged with all these groups is what we're about. So, you know, understanding what their needs are, like how many meetings they have, what kind of input they have, yeah, how much time does it take to make this happen? You know, these are all discussion points that really I'm not clear on anyway.
Yeah, just through the chair, if you were to defer the decision, you do have your second networking meeting this afternoon. And at that meeting, I understand Eileen's going to talk to you about the next networking, which is proposed to be out and about with the Pāuanui groups, and some of the next upcoming ones. So I'm not saying that will give you everything you need, but at least it'll give you a glance of how you might structure those and what that looks like moving forward.
Then we might just defer this, do you think? And
Then we can talk this afternoon about.
this afternoon and then
Have people.
Just
the next meeting.
part 1.
Yeah, you could do.
Yep. That is that we received the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board Liaison Representatives Report. Just move that part.
Yeah, and then you can make a resolution now that you'll defer it to the next meeting, a decision to be made at the next meeting. You can change the wording for resolution 2 and just say that the board wishes to defer any decision on liaison representative to the next community board meeting.
Yeah, and I think it's deferred to discuss with the community how best we set up this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So we can just have that wording for number 2, Kelly?
That the board wishes to defer any decision on the liaison representative to the next community board meeting.
Yeah.
Just through the chair, can I just propose an upcoming meeting, just because we're out of cycle at the moment, and so you might need time to just go and have those discussions. So it might not come back the next one, it might come back the one after, but you just want to get into your, I suppose, your groove a little bit with those groups and understand that you'll probably be ready by next meeting, but just in case.
So instead of putting next meeting, we'll just put future meeting, because the next community board meeting is only in 3 weeks' time due to the postponement. So if we just put to instead of saying next meeting, put future meeting.
Yeah, similar.
So would you like to read that resolution out again, please?
Through the chair, the board wishes to defer any decision on the liaison representative to the future community board meeting.
To a future.
And section 1, we're going to receive, and then part 2 is what you just read out.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct.
So I say move.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All in favour? Aye. Thank you. Moving right along. Three point one. No, it's not. From here, 3.1. 4.1. The variation of lease. That the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board receives 1, the variation of lease Rex McCormack 20 Redbridge Road, Tairua, dated the 9th of January 2023, and 2, recommends to council that they approve the variation to the deed of lease held by Rex McCormack for part 20 Redbridge Road, Tairua. comprised in the computer freehold register SA 20A/322 to include Georgia and Miles Nugent of Tairua as tenants, with all other terms and conditions associated with the deed of lease to remain unchanged. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll move.
Is there any, who seconded that?
I'll move.
Yeah,
Oh, whatever.
moved Terry and seconded Barry.
We've got Nicole here. Nicole's here to speak to it.
Nicole?
Good morning,
Morning.
everybody.
Good
I
morning.
just, good morning. I take the report as been read. It's just purely administrative, administrative request from Mr. McCormack, and council has no problem with it.
Straightforward.
Yeah. So I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Yeah. Carried.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you very much.
5.1, Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board CAPEX work program that the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board receives. The Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board CAPEX work program 2022-2023 and other operational information updates report dated 11th of Jan 2023. Can I have a move and seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll move.
Yeah, I'll see.
Any
Discussion?
questions?
Ed. Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, sorry, Andrew. Yeah, not Ed.
Andrew.
You can call me Ed, I don't mind.
My apologies.
Any questions? I've got one update for you. The Beaumont Green playground in Pauanui. We have a contractor who's been engaged, and it will be completed before the end of June. Okay.
What's that for? Sorry, Andrew. Which one was that?
The Beaumont Green playground. It's on the first page.
Okay.
We finished the Ajax playground. That's done. Excuse me. And the Beaumont Green.
Which one's that?
Sorry.
Is that Kennedy Park?
Pass.
Which one is it?
Is it part of
Beaumont,
the Parks and Reserves?
Beaumont Green.
Yeah, we haven't got one of those. So, which one of the columns that relate to?
Be probably the Parks and Reserves renewals, is that the one?
Pauanui playground equipment renewals.
Oh, right, renewals down here.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. It's on the first page.
Right.
We finished these two, the Ajax and Beaumont Green.
Right.
The Ajax is completed. The Beaumont Green will be completed before the end of June. And also on page 2, Tairua Skate Park, pricing of the construction work will be completed in the next 3 weeks.
Right, so it's on track at the moment, isn't it?
It is on track.
But you'll see in the annual plan, it's looking for deferring it.
It's Tairua.
Time. So that's a discussion. We'll get to that when we get to that, because that's really important for the guys to, because if you look at submissions and pressure, will put it back where it belongs, because a council motion was to do it as quick as possible. That was the deal behind the whole thing.
And we're still following that directive.
Right.
Okay. So the annual plan won't be confirmed until, so I understand, the end of June. Before that time, we will have a contractor on board.
Yeah, but the annual plan consultation document is going out into the third project that we're going to discuss on Thursday.
Yeah, correct.
So if it's passed on Thursday, it will be in the annual plan to go out for consultation as a deferred project.
Correct. That is correct.
Okay.
All I can report now is what we are doing as far as pushing the project ahead is concerned.
Thank you, Andrew. That's very good. Yeah, we haven't had this discussion since November, so we really do need these upgrades because it has an impact for sure.
Yeah, well, bear in mind the longevity of this project. Yeah, we're making good progress.
Yeah, we want to continue that.
Making good progress at the moment. If the annual plan halts or changes that, then fine, so be it.
Right.
Okay.
The finances, the finance is still secure?
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Warwick.
The finance is still secure?
So I understand. So I understand. Eileen, have you got any comments on that?
No.
No.
Okay. So just be aware that so the Pāuanui Escape Bowl has been deferred till 2024.
Correct, in the annual plan.
492,000 that's in the Tairua-Pāuanui minor reserve projects. These are only up for discussion on Thursday, but they will go into the annual plan consultation.
So I understand.
That has been removed, and the Tairua-Pāuanui streetlight improvements and the Tairua-Pāuanui footpath construction. So these are things that the board needs to understand, and they'll go when they go out in the document, if they're passed on Thursday, will be requiring submissions from people to be discussed if they want these to be reconsidered.
That is my understanding as well.
The Heritage Committee have asked about the finance for the Manaia Hub extension. That money's still secure?
It is, but that's been deferred for another year, Warwick.
Sorry, repeat?
In the annual plan, half the budget for next year has been put into the following year. And that's another annual plan discussion. If you remember, we had budget this year and next year. This year and next year. Next year's budget has been halved in the annual plan to go into the following year. So instead of a 2-year project in the LTP at the moment, it will be a 3-year project.
It's not how I read it here, Andrew, and this year we've got the 23-24 line plan, we've got 228,744, and the proposed annual plan is 116,316, and so it's been halved, like you say.
Yeah.
And then the rest would roll over into the following year. You're saying the following 2 years? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm saying at the moment, this project is a 2-year project at the moment.
Yeah.
Subject to the annual plan being finalised.
Yes.
If it is finalised, it will become, as it is now, it will become a 3-year project.
Oh, right. Okay.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're telling me that, so I'm listening. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but regardless, our discussions with the heritage people, the library staff, the architect remain current at the moment. Okay.
Right.
So again, may I just say that we're still pushing ahead with that project.
Yeah, and the skate park, those are 2 key projects for Pāuanui and Tairua, which we'd really like to see happen. So it really remains, if it does go into the annual plan consultation, that we're looking for responses from the community, because that Tairua skate park was deemed and pushed to be completed as fast as possible. So I just really hope that that continues on and we get that over the line. But yeah, we'll wait and see.
You're not alone there.
Just through the chair, just to follow up on some comments made, the timeframes for the annual plan, because it still is in draft form, it's only proposed. Council will sign off on that on Thursday, and then it'll be open for public feedback between the 14th of March to the 10th of April. And then hearings will be scheduled for the 26th of April before council deliberates on the submissions made on the 17th of May. So there is a period to go before late in June, council adopts the annual plan. So we encourage everyone to have their say, and when the pack goes up live, it will have all of the links to all of the information in to inform everyone on how to have their say, and also the detail behind it.
Okay, yeah, fair enough, yeah.
Thank you, Dean.
What else? The other one I want to raise is, obviously we've heard from Ian Smith about Holland Close.
Yep.
Again, this is a project that has been on for a long time, as you'd appreciate, Andrew.
Yes, I do.
We've had several project engineers have a go at this, and we started off with a $6 million or $7 million budget. We're now looking at a $100,000 budget and still not seeing actual work through the consent process. So we're just mindful that Gordon's been pushing this for a few years, and we'd like to see this progress as quick as possible. Ian spoke this morning about this. Are you confident that we're heading in the right direction with this project?
Yes, I am. We've got the right project manager managing the project, and Ian is fully aware of what's gone on in the past and what has to happen in the future. And I believe some action will be taken, some physical action will be taken very shortly once we've tendered the work. So Ian is onto it. I did listen, and I spoke to Ian about it prior to the meeting this morning. Ian is, I did listen to what Ian had to say, and I have listened. I've met Gordon before. I've been at the meetings with Bob chaired some time ago in the Pauanui hub, and I'm aware that this project is turning into a teenager at the moment.
Frustration.
But just to answer your question, we are aware of the importance of it. It is not straightforward. However, that doesn't affect the action that we intend to take. So
Andrew, I was concerned, well, not concerned, I was interested to hear that Ian said instead of WRC doing the consent, TCDC were going to do the consent.
That's my understanding.
Is that something that's come out of why the approach there?
You'll have to ask Ian that, I'm afraid.
Here, I can respond if you wish.
Yes, please do, Ian.
It's not so much that it's our consent rather than their consent rather than ours. With the WRC have, as I mentioned before, a general authorisation or a permitted activity to do maintenance work on streams like that. And we could, but there are a lot of rules and ifs and buts about it. And the decision to get our own consent will give us more freedom to do, give us more freedom to do what we want to do when we want to do it, rather than having to worry about their rules as opposed to our own rules, I guess. It's a simple way of putting it.
So if I can ask a question through the chair, the process through regional council is going to take 6 months. Will this take 6 months?
I don't think it matters. at this stage. It'll, I don't know, you know, getting a consent from WRC is like a bit like a length of a piece of string. But we've spent a lot of time and effort getting sign off from the neighbours and getting archaeology studies done and environmental AE reports and stuff done. And we put enough effort into it to justify carrying on getting our own consent, but our consent is from the regional council. It's not from TCDC, which I think is what you alluded to.
This consent is going to take 6 months, no, 3 years ago.
Andrew, the budget, 1.7 mil. Awful lot of
Yes,
money.
Warwick,
Is that still,
current,
yeah,
yes,
1.7 million?
yes.
Again, Andrew, if I can interrupt, we do have drawings and tender documents ready to do part of the works, and that is an estimate on what it's going to cost, but the improved pipeline network, stormwater discharge pipeline on Mount Ab is not going to be cheap. We've got for instance, we've issued a purchase order to Chorus for $30,000 to move cables and stuff. So it could potentially be that much money, yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Not on that.
Okay.
Can I just talk about Paku boat ramp?
Yes.
Yep, you can do.
So that's completed, you've got, it's completed here.
That's right. Wayne's completed that.
Will that be a boat ramp that you charge fees for using, or is it free to use?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't know, actually. Good question. I'll find out for you.
Well, it should be user pay.
Well, I'm trying to think of a reason why it wouldn't be user pay.
There's no signage there at the moment.
Okay.
But it should be all in line with the others, the other
Should be, yes.
practice.
Should be.
Through the chair,
Would you, through the chair, would you let me find that out and come back to you, please?
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, I'll send a response to Eileen and she can send an email out to everyone. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. And the last one I've got is around the street light improvements. I think that budget's going to go next year.
Yep, I agree.
We've only spent $1,300 or 30,000. So if you need some lights, I would think there's some money there to spend if you're going to do it, because you're not going to have it next year if it goes through the annual plan process.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other
Sometimes,
questions?
very often we don't spend the full amount on the streetlights, but yeah, I can see hardly anything's been spent. All right.
Thank you. That's me.
Any other questions for Andrew? If not, I'll put the motion that the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board receives the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board CAPEX work program 2022-2023 and other operational updates report dated 11th Jan. We've had a move in a second. I'll put it. All in favour?
No.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Action schedule.
Yeah, this is schedule through the chair, if I can, to start this process of organising these three key community groups in Tairua and one in Pāuanui for the beach care, reserves care and harbour care. That's my request through the action schedule, to start that process and form those committees or groups.
So through the chair, it's up to the communities to get their community groups organised. I did speak to the Tairua Ratepayers Association on last week, and they're starting to get that reserves committee for Tairua-Pāuanui underway.
Is it one for Tairua and one for Pāuanui? They're separate, aren't they?
Pauanui's got they have a schedule that they
Yeah,
work
so
through.
do they have a beach care? I think they
I'm
do.
not sure if they have a big.
So how do we communicate with them?
Well, the community groups, so they organise their community groups. Once they've got their community groups formed, we then start liaising with them. We don't go and get the community groups together. The community groups have to come together themselves first, and then I will help them through every process after that.
Right, so you've spoken to these groups
I've spoken to the ratepayers who were going out to get their reserves group.
and Pāuanui as well.
No, it'll be up to Pāuanui to get their own reserve group.
But how do they know? I'm just saying, how's the communication flow going so that they know to form these things? How do they know?
Well, they need to come and talk to us.
Yeah,
Well, we've started doing that.
You've done the ratepayers at Tairua, but you haven't done the ratepayers at Pāuanui yet.
I can do that.
Is that planned to, now I'm just asking the question, is that planned to be done?
It isn't at the moment because I haven't been approached by anybody to actually start working through that process.
I thought it would come from us to go out there after those meetings.
Definitely, I will be talking with Pāuanui Community Office.
Right, okay. I think that's really part of the step that should happen. Is that, do you feeling that's okay with you guys? That works?
I'm a bit confused here. Are you suggesting that the resident ratepayers groups, Pāuanui and Tairua, organise a harbour care group and a Parks and Reserves group within their organisations, or is this? No.
No, when I met with the Tairua ratepayers asked me about the reserves group.
Yes.
I advised them that the community organises their reserves group, and once they've got their reserves group together, whoever in the community want to make that group, I did refer them to Sherry and Trevor Lamb, who were on the reserve group before. Once they've got their group together, and whoever wants to go on their group, to come to me and we'll work through the next part of the process.
So the way forward on this is to what, publicly advertise for members for these groups?
We're not advertising, but the community has to form the group themselves.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, well, that's, you're gonna let them know that it's available. Surely you have to advertise.
Somebody from.
I think we need a communication flow. That's what we're after. Just to go out there and say, hey, the community board's really keen to see a group that's focusing on the beach care, focusing on the reserves, and focusing on the harbour. Can those groups form themselves into a group and then come back and talk to us? That's the kind of communication I think you're trying to get to. And that's what we're trying to get to here. Is that right? Is that where we're getting? Is that where we're at?
We have a very strong gardening group here, 60 odd members that are very active. I have spoken to them last year. I approached them, sort of wised them up, but we've got to try and re-establish. Is that the way we should be doing it? Going through that sort of a group, or through Cherries? I don't know. You tell me how we do it.
Well, let's see what comes out of it. I think once the communication's out there that there's a desire to have these groups formed, we'll see how they're generated or how they're put together and how it interacts. Because we're asking these people who will get to know their assets really well, be able to come and talk to us in a sensible way to say, hey, that's kind of works for us or that doesn't kind of work. I think that's what it's all about. Just what they've done in Pāuanui around their reserves. They've got 2 or 3 members. I think Kim Goldsmith, is it? Coppersmith's on it. And she's an art type person who knows how the trees which need pruning, which need dropping down, those kind of things. I think that's the old idea of it. And beach care is obviously very key at the moment with erosion. That that's a group that would go out there and help re-establish beach care, work with the council on replanting, and it's just having someone to go to ask the questions. Really,
there's a great wealth of skill and knowledge in our communities. Parks and Reserves Well, I don't think we've got the time today to really get into that one.
So for these groups, we need to invite people
But
to join.
You said we've got, will council go out and put this, will they do it through their media? Or how do we attract these people? How do we get them up, get running?
Don't we use the existing groups?
Well, we don't have them here. You mean, like the gardening desk? We've got to
Can we
create.
put it in our comms in the paper? There's a comms page that we put out each week or something in the local rag and put a little article in that. I'm trying to do maybe.
I'll have a chat with Dee and we'll see a way forward on this.
Yeah, happy to do that. I think for now we let the area manager make contact with those people that she's mentioned, allow them to get established. And once they're established, then we'll be able to come back to you with what they need. And we'll be able to host them at a networking or go and see them, that type of thing.
Yeah.
This will really give, these three groups will be really key because they're dealing with the issues that we're all focusing now, and that's around resilience and shoreline management and how we deal with the assets that council owns. So I just see that these groups will have a quite an influence on what's going on in their communities. And it being a community group, it kind of makes sense that they have that local knowledge and provide it to us to consider.
Exactly.
Yeah. So just through the chair, I think it's understood that that's a priority focus for those groups to get up and running. So we'll just work through that and get them to the point where we can have that conversation.
I love it. Yep.
Am I allowed to say anything to that? Good afternoon. I can answer that question quite well. Reserves.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to go there, all right? It's the big.
I was chairman of Parks and Reserves.
Okay, is any further discussion on the action schedule? I did start to read out the motion. I'll read the motion again. That the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board receives the Tairua-Pāuanui Community Board action schedule dated 18th of January 23. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had the discussion, so I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. No against? Carried. There is no further business, so I declare the meeting closed at 11:42. Thank you all.
When's the next? Is it
Recording is stopped.